easy to break. That's how I used to be. Here, take it. Now I'm awake. I'll tell you what I see.
Plastic don't shine, glitter don't shine, rhinestones don't shine the way you do. You are so real, you are so rare. I see you there, I see you.
I see stars, so many stars tonight. You could make diamonds dull. You are so beautiful. I see stars, you shine as bright as day. I will look out for you, we'll light each other's way. You're all stars.
See, I went low, not high. That was my problem. I don't be frightened like me. The darker the night, the brighter you shine. Plastic don't shine,
Glitter don't shine, rhinestones don't shine the way you do. You are on fire, you can rise higher, up in the sky. Enjoy the view. You stars, so many stars tonight. You could make diamonds dull. You are so beautiful. I see stars, we are stars, we shine as bright as day. I will look out for you, we'll light each other's way. I see stars. I see stars, so many stars tonight. We could make diamonds dull. We are so beautiful. I see stars, we shine as bright as day. I will look out for you,
we'll light each other's way.
we are so real, we are so rare. We see you there, we see you. We're all stars, we're all stars. So many stars, stars.
Good evening, friends. I'm Emily Greenwald, Vice President of Development here at Overture Center for the Arts, and it is so good to be here with you tonight. Thank you for joining us for our first Overture Forum. It's hard to believe that it's been nearly 6 months since we were required to close our doors as we braced for a pandemic. It still seems so surreal that this is what we're dealing with. We had expected to be welcoming you back to the theater by this time. Instead, we connect tonight from our homes. That opening number you just saw, I See Stars from the musical Mean Girls, was also the opening number by the Jerry Ensemble in our virtual Jerry Awards show held on June 21st. When so much was canceled for students this spring, we felt it was important to continue to celebrate the incredible artistic talent in high school musicals across the state. Our team worked with the schools, directors, and students to create a heartwarming virtual show that has now had over 20,000 views. This quick change to virtual programming is just one of the ways Overture has responded to the immense challenges we face in a business whose foundation is bringing people together for thought-provoking, emotional, transformational live performances and programs. Many of you have been asking about what's happening in the arts industry. What does it mean for Overture? And when do you think we'll be able to be together again? We created these forums to address these questions as we are able with the information we know today and dream about our future. This is an experiment, and we look forward to your feedback about the format, future topics, and what you are looking forward to when Overture reopens. When we came up with this forum idea a couple of weeks ago, we thought 30, maybe 50 people would be interested in something like this, and we'd have an intimate discussion about the industry. similar to a Cocktails with Tim with Cara, if you've done that. Well, we underestimated. Over 300 people have registered for tonight. We are welcome to our employees, board members, arts leaders, patrons, volunteers, donors, and partners. The Overture family has gathered tonight. With such a big crowd, we've had to adapt from our original plan, from a discussion to more of a presentation style. And however, we are still eager to hear your questions and comments. Tim Sowers, our Vice President of Programming and Community Engagement, will share a state of the industry overview. And then Jackie Getz, our Vice President of Operations, will share what a performing arts center has to consider reopening in an environment like this. After their presentations, we'll address some of the questions that we weren't able to work into the presentation that you submitted with your registrations. And you may submit questions and comments anytime using the chat feature. Tonight, we focus on discussing the foundational forces impacting arts organizations like Overture during the pandemic. While we may not get to all of your questions today, know that we will incorporate them into future forums and communications. So without further ado, let's get started. Tim, will you please take it away?
I will. Well, hello there, everybody. One of the things I miss is talking with you about shows and seeing you, but there are no shows. And so we're just going to talk a little bit tonight about, where we are, what we're looking at, what's happening, in our field. And I was surfing through the internet over the weekend, looking at news story clips and here and there. And there was this interview from Samantha Bee, if everybody knows the talk show host, Samantha Bee, and it asked her, what are the things that are getting you through the pandemic? And her number one response was the Great British Baking Show. And I was like, me too, Samantha. I am watching an episode every night. I'm down to like a season and a half. And, I like to critique things, and talk to you about things. And what I love about that show is that they're human. It's not an American show where they're after $250,000 if they win. They get a cake stand and some flowers. But it's really about them doing their best, doing something that they love, and the praise they get. Like, they're so thrilled when the Mary Berry and Paul Hollywood love their work. And every episode has some kind of an emotional thing, whether it's somebody who's leaving or it's somebody who's done very well. And that's what I look for in a show. And I don't know what I'm going to replace it with when I'm done with another season and a half. So if you have any suggestions, you can put them in the chat feature. But I'm here to talk about, where we are in this pandemic. And as you know, we're closed. And we're closed until we're able to gather large crowds and that we can assure that you, as an audience member, are safe and healthy. The other night, we did a nightcap after we did this Christopher Jackson show. And one of the patrons said, we're here for you and we're ready to come back. And we trust that you will know when it's right for us to come back to keep us safe and healthy. And she's right. And I was so touched by that response. And it's part of our charge as an organization to make sure that that happens. But as we're closed, we're all closed mostly across the country in all these performing arts centers. And one is we have mandates that we can't open. And number two, the product is not out there, right? You'll see a little bit of opening here and there in different parts of the country. And they may be opening with a locally based musical that they're producing. And they're trying everything to keep smaller audiences. And it's a great test. I'm going to tell you, there was one example, I'm not going to say who it was, but there was one example of a local company that was doing a production and the pandemic spread. Their actors got sick, they ran out of sanitizing equipment, and they were just in no place to open. We will not do that, nor can we financially do that. There's just no way that a performing arts center can open their doors and do a show for 100 people, say, in like an Overture Hall setting. It just doesn't make any sense artistically or financially. And as you know, right now, the mandate in Dane County is 10 indoors for a gathering and 25 outside. So just think about how long that's going to take to grow. That's the realism, right? As this virus continues, so will that timeline. And the arts industry is, really hurt. I mean, we're one of the hardest hit industries in the country, like $12.5 billion nationally, economically, and 38 million in Wisconsin. I mean, that's crazy, right? But let's look at how shows kind of are working right now. Broadway is closed, as many of you know, who follow Broadway. And they have a plan to open beginning in 2021. But it's not going to be all at once. You're not going to see, boom, there's 25 Broadway shows and away we go. It's going to be a filtering in. And I did some research. I went online the other day just to look to see if I could buy tickets for something. And shows like Hadestown and Tina the Musical, they had shows tickets you could buy beginning in January. But then when I went to Wicked website, their first available was March. So you can see there's going to be a scaling up till they get the shows open. And that's on the producers and their decision to make. And let's hope that that is true, that it doesn't get prolonged any longer, and it happens in January. That also then take a look at Broadway on the road. Right now, there are no shows out there touring. They're all closed. And this timeline of when shows are going to begin again really is based on this pandemic and when it's going to go away, or when there's going to be some kind of vaccination or something to assure that all these venues can open. A Broadway show needs like 20 cities, right? They need to have like 20 cities to know that they can get a tour. And this is the time of year where they start to go into, well, it's late. Sorry, I'm wrong. Summer is the time of year where they go into production to get ready for their fall tours. A lot of them, if a new show is starting out, it could take anywhere from 4 to 6 months. They have to do the costumes, the set, cast the show. Now, a returning show may not take as long. They may ask the company back, or the company is on a contract that just went on hiatus for a few weeks in the summer, and they come back, they need to do some rehearsing, and then go back on the road. So that takes less time. So if you look at that 4 to 6 kind of month for new shows, again, imagine what they're trying to do to think about opening sometime after the first of the year. So tricky time frame. The same is true with like Overture Present shows, or any of the one-nighter, the concerts, the dance, the variety, right? They have to have a certain number of cities too to make their tour work, so it's financially viable for them to go out. And they're all sitting and waiting. We're all sitting and waiting. We're in this gigantic bubble right now, just waiting to know when we can get the go-ahead to move forward. And a lot of changes were happening. Like many of you who are subscribers have been getting our notices of either a show is canceled or it's being rescheduled. And that's crazy. It takes a lot of time. Imagine thinking about Broadway and, oh, we're going to move 2 shows, or we have to now move 3 shows, or we have to look at when this is like Come From Away, for example, moved an entire year into September of 21. I have to think about what year we're in, people. And, into September of 21. If our season went off as planned, our season of 2021 would be over before the 1920 season. So imagine that, and imagine everywhere across the country making all of these changes and all of these reschedules. So it's been crazy. But one thing that I've loved through this process is everybody became a little bit more collegial. Like we really are that working together tagline that happened when this pandemic, it really is true. We are really working to make this work. One of my joys is I meet statewide with Fox Valley and Marcus, we have a meeting every week or every other week to talk about our procedures, to get on the same page together. And, you know, we've never done that before. I mean, we've had meetings before, we've talked about stuff, but we're now more colleagues than competition. And I love that that has happened. And then you look at like the rentals that come in. So we work with outside promoters like FPC Live, for example, or Live Nation. And sometimes they just rent our building and bring in the artist and we sell the tickets, et cetera, et cetera. Other times we co-pro with them and have a partnership with a show that we got in, right? So we had all these shows scheduled with them that are all got moved. And some of you, like one of the examples of that is Steve Martin and Martin Short. I know some of you probably have tickets for that and you're waiting to hear, so are we. Like we have some dates on hold, but now we're waiting to see how that tour will play out as we're, again, in a waiting game. And the other thing that I loved about all of you is you all are understanding this really and have been patient and have been great. And I have to tell you how much meaning that has for all of us. The ticket office has talked about like when Come From Away changed, like we were all ready for, you know, all the news. And the biggest comments were, yay, we're glad it's still coming, right? As opposed to, I can't believe you're changing this. That's a year down the road, blah, 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 right? So that's how that's all affecting us in terms of the product, being able to open. And then as many of you also know, because some of you are supporters of this and you come to so many of our other programs, you know, before the pandemic, we had 20 programs that we implemented to the audience. Besides the Overture Presents series and Broadway, we had our like signature programs of Kids in the Rotunda, right? The Saturday morning program, or On Stage, the school series, or the Jerry Awards, right? What's going to happen to them? Well, some of them are going to be going away for a while. Because we're not able to implement it. We don't know what the large crowds are going to look like. And then the financial repercussions that this is costing our organization. And some, you know, many of those programs are free or low cost, and we rely on corporations and foundations and individual donors and all of that to make that all happen. And that money is changing around. So, you know, we're about to embark with the organization in a multi-year strategic plan. And that strategic plan will address what our program, one of the areas it will address is what our program is going to look like over the next couple years and how we're going to be able to filter some of these back or create some new things that are coming out of this, right? That can happen. We're also going to be looking at our finances. We're also going to be looking at operations. Like, you know, it's a no-brainer. Reopening is part of a strategic plan. And how are we going to do that? And one of the things that's been hard is that, you know, we have a reduced staff. We have had furloughs. We've had temporary and permanent layoffs. So playing around with that whole piece is a big jigsaw puzzle. And the timing, how everything is going to happen, has really affected us, right? As we sit here and wait and make our plans. But back to the other programs, you know, some programs, like I just said, the On-Stage series or our residency work that we do, all this work that goes into schools, while schools are not in session, those programs aren't going to be happening, right? So kids aren't going to be bused to Overture to see shows because they can't and we can't. Now we're going to do a little bit of virtual work with the teachers and some of our programs like Disney Musical in Schools. And one of the other programs is Beautiful Lullaby Project, Carnegie Hall's project. That's a program that could happen virtually. So we're looking at some of those opportunities, and many of you, or some of you, I don't know who all of you are out there because I technically can't see you. So I'm talking to myself, but I know who you are and I'm feeling you, right? And I forgot what I was going to say because of that, but something like, what was I talking about? Somebody help me. You can't help me now.
Lullaby Project.
The Lullaby Project. You know, that's a project that can happen virtually. And we've been experimenting. We did the Jerry Awards, which was a huge success. You heard Emily talk about the numbers and all the people who were doing it. And, you know, one of the sweetest things that happened with that program is we had students writing to us, kind of begging us to please have it. And we said, well, you know, we can't, we would love to. And we're looking at a virtual model for that in the future. Because we want to be able to still support teachers in their work and students in their education as well. And then we have, the virtual programming we were talking about. We had a very good success a few weeks ago when we presented Christopher Jackson live from the West Side. It was part of a bigger project. There were 17 venues across the country, and did very well with it in terms of our expectations. And we're looking at some future programming with this new network that has formed. They're all nonprofits, and all the money that we, sold the tickets for came back to us. We did have some expenses. We paid an artist fee to participate, but it was reasonable. And what I loved about that piece as a virtual piece was that it was a live performance and not a recorded performance, not in somebody's home. The production values were better, higher. Now, there's a series that we're looking at that is going to be fabulous if this all goes through in the future. And maybe in the future, we will have some cross virtual programming with live. Who knows how that will look? One of the things that differs between us as a presenting organization and like a producing organization, like a theater company or dance company, they have all the content and all the licensing and all of that to be able to show their work and to either stream it or show their past productions. I don't know if you've seen anything on the Met, but the Met has been doing some great broadcasting of their work during this pandemic. There's also a lot of rules out there too. Not only do we have to abide by the health and safety, so do the artists coming in and the stagehands, and there's unions involved, and there's lots of rules and regulations that are going into place. And depending when we open, who knows what we'll have to do at that point. Then we have the other, major programming piece at Overture are all the resident companies and the work that they're doing. And, we're looking at ways to be able to support them, whether maybe it will be a streaming program, maybe there'll be a recorded performance that, so we're not knocking any of that out of the water. We're really working with the resident companies to make sure that they're successful in a time like this too. So it's a lot of playing around out there. The other thing, and something that you could do, is there's a lot of advocacy going on right now. There's Save Our Stages at saveourstages.com. And if you're on our email list, you probably got an email when we were asking you to sign a petition. There is legislation right now in Congress. It's $10 billion that would go to performing art venues, independent run performing arts venues with grants through the Small Business Administration. And in the past, there was the PPP that helped paid for salaries, but this would be money that would go to help pay our rent, our payroll, our utilities, personal protective. We haven't had any support that has been targeted yet to us as an industry. And so this is an important legislation that's out there. There's also some local legislation. We posted some of this last week. This is NIVA, which is the National Independent Venue Association. That was an organization that was formed during this time to get support to preserve and nurture our industry. There are 90 Wisconsin venues as part of NIVA, and we're one of them. And I think there's something like 800 nationally. But right now there's a pitch going on. The group is advocating right now that Governor Evers earmark some of the CARE dollars that will go back to the performing arts. So there's been some petitions going on right now. The other thing that we know in our industry, and we've all talked about this, we're working nationally, all of us, particularly on the executive team and our director level too. We all have organizations or groups that we belong to and memberships, and we're all looking at our individual areas within those groups. Like I said, meeting with Fox and Marcus to look at our reopening plans and how do we get legislation moving is part of our cause for that. I do know that when we do go to open, and this is just me, don't quote me, press. I do know that when we do go to open, it will be gradual. It won't all of a sudden be, there's 40 shows at Overture, let's go. It will be a gradual opening. And I imagine that it will be local first, right? The groups that are here producing locally are going to have an easier time getting a show up and open before the tours come through. I hope I was successful kind of talking about this. I could talk about it for another hour. I think I went over my allotted time anyway, but I just wanted to say that this is what's happening in the industry. And I'm going to say, and it's not just affecting us, you have to also think about the ecosystem of all the agents and the agencies that are booking all of these shows out there, and they don't have any revenue coming in either. I was disheartened this weekend and saddened this weekend when one of the iconic agencies, Columbia Artist Management, who have been in operation for 80 years, they have a theatrical arm, classical music, cultural, jazz, all kinds of artists, and they have decided they closed their doors. They just closed down business. And that was for me. And so I hope that you got some insight here tonight and that I was helpful for you. And I miss seeing you all, as you can imagine. And I'm sure you miss seeing me too. Right? Just teasing, I'm just teasing. You got to have one of the things that I worried about was I don't want to be too flippant about any of this. And I didn't want to be too serious with you either, because this is a serious matter, but you have to have a sense of humor right now to get through all of this. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Tim. You always do such a good job of explaining how we are an intricate ecosystem in the arts, and we need us all to be successful and to move forward, but always with safety and health of our patrons, artists, and staff at the heart of it all. Thank you for the questions that are coming in through chat, and please keep them coming. We will take a minute to answer those afterwards, but first we have Jackie Getz with us. And Jackie, can you please tell us a little bit more what you're seeing on the operational side as performing arts centers consider what it will take eventually to reopen?
Yes, I will. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Tim. That was wonderful. I will be serious, but I'll be shorter. I'm going to talk a little bit about the state of the industry as it relates to operations. So as Tim indicated, we're talking to our colleagues and counterparts from around the country. We're talking to health experts. We're monitoring information nationally, regionally, and locally to help inform this safe return. So what are we seeing in industry, and what will it take to reopen in this environment? Those are good questions. And as we think about these things and we monitor and review vast amounts of information, there are three anchors that help keep us focused and as we consider reopening. So I thought I would share those with you this evening. The first anchor or focus point is routes of transmission. In general, there are three main routes of viral transmission, and our efforts are and will continue to be to reduce those routes. The first is droplet transmission, and this is minimized by physical distancing, wearing masks, and covering coughs and sneezes. The second is fomite transmission, and this is transmission through contaminated surfaces. And this is minimized through sanitizing, disinfecting, using touchless alternatives, and frequent hand washing. And the third is airborne transmission, and this is when small aerosols disperse about the room. And this is minimized by increasing the amount of outdoor air ventilation and increasing and improving air filtration systems. Our second anchor is about the four phases we have identified moving us from closure to opening. These are closure, ease up, ramp up, and reopen. Closure is where we are now, and it's in place to help reduce the spread of the virus, to keep our employees safe, and to preserve our finances. Ease Up is much about the resident organizations. Overtures are home, and so we're working with them on potential plans for virtual performances and recordings with no audiences. But at some point, this type of programming may include small audiences, and we may use them as opportunities to test our systems. Ramp up will happen when we have a good idea of when we can reopen. This will be an active time. It's where we'll do things like recall, hire, and train employees, finalize plans, order supplies, and implement a communication plan. And reopening is when we can safely reopen and resume activities with few restrictions and full houses. As far as reopening plans go, we have current guidelines and tentative plans in place, and these have been developed and reviewed by the resident organizations and health experts, and we continue to review and monitor them. But it's important to note that given that reopening will not happen until we can safely serve full audiences, some of these things will become obsolete, so the guidelines and the tentative plans are very fluid. The third anchor is called the 6 metrics that must be met for Overture to reopen. The first metric is that the facility, the mechanical and technical equipment and systems need to be ready to go and in prime working order. The second is adequate supplies. These are things like cleaners, disinfectants, sanitizers, systems, and masks. Here I'd like to note that we made a decision early on to be conservative and not jump in and make large purchases when we were really unsure of what we would need and when. We've been hearing stories of places that bought into expensive disinfecting systems and now are trying to return them. So we made a strategic choice to invest only in what we know we'll need and what will remain useful. We're also hopeful that state or national legislation will provide funding that can be used to make these investments. The third metric is adequate staffing levels, and this is about recalling and hiring and bringing our volunteers back. The fourth is updated operational plans. The fifth is training on all these updates and plans. And the sixth metric that must be met for Overture to reopen is a robust communication plan. So the key to all of this is being flexible and patient, and it's about having a flexible plan that can be implemented and adjusted as necessary. So I hope this sheds some light on how we're approaching opening, health and safety, and I do hope we're all together very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. And I just want to say thank you for your leadership during this time. You were someone who called us together and said, we need to be tracking this COVID-19 thing. And at that point, I don't know that very many of us in the organization or on the exec team really had it on our radar, or even really knew what it was. But you said we need to have a task force and we need to do it now. And so we had a good 3 months of meeting regularly and scanning the world to see how this was impacting different countries and how we could possibly predict that mass gatherings would be reduced to shut down. And so thank you for your leadership, and Tim, yours as well. You were right there alongside on the program side during this time. And we wouldn't be in the place we are without you. So grateful for you both. And thank you for your questions and comments that are coming through. Again, please feel free to continue to use the chat feature, and we'll try to address many of your questions as we can in the next 15 to 20 minutes or so. So we did receive a couple of questions from registration that we weren't able to kind of work into the presentation. One was about credits that we have. That if you have credits that were due to cancel productions, will those be held indefinitely or do they have an expiration date? Jackie, would you like to take that?
Sure, I will. Thanks. Thank you, Emily. Thank you also for your leadership during these tough times. There's no expiration date on the credits, so they will be good for forever.
For whenever you're ready to come back, we hope to have a show for you, and we can't wait to see you. So one of the questions that we've had is, what would the financial impact be if Overture remained closed through September 2021? Obviously, that's something that we're concerned about and financially modeling, but Tim, would you be willing to just kind of talk about our thought process right now and how we're approaching finances?
Sure. I mean, I don't know how you want me. We're very conservative right now because we have to look at our resources through a time when we're opening, when we have earned revenue coming back in. Like, we don't have the earned revenue right now from ticket sales or rentals in the building. So that has been all wiped out with maybe a few thousand when we did the Chris Jackson, for example, we had a few $1,000s. It's not a lot of money, people. $40 tickets, it wasn't a lot of money, right? So right now we're relying on the contributed. So we'll be looking at what that means out over a period of time. And we are doing this monthly, quarterly to assure of our financial sustainability to be around for a time when the building will be open and back up for operation. Is that what the answer?
Yeah.
Well, what was the beginning part? What was the beginning part of that question?
Well, what would the financial impact be if Overture remained?
Well, and then the other thing is you have to look at the financial impact of our community. You know, Overture, we haven't done a economic impact study in a long time, but when we did the last one, I don't know how many years ago was that, 10 now?
10.
Right? Like it was millions and millions of dollars, the impact, because, you know, you're all coming downtown to see a show, but you're going out for dinner, you might be hiring a babysitter, you do a little shopping, you buy some gas, right? Like you might stay in a hotel, and the hotel business is, you know, way down, and because we don't have artists coming in to stay at hotels. So it's a huge impact to our community and the downtown area particularly.
Right. And when we think about things that far into the future, I mean, obviously there's so much that could change, and we've seen so many things change for the positive as well as the challenges. And so, you know, we have an incredible financial modeling spreadsheet that our CFO and COO, Chris Vogel, has put together. So we can do all of those what ifs and see what what that might mean for us, and then we can plan. So if that becomes the future, then we know to be.
And one of the nice things is, I'm sorry, one of the nice things that Emily's talking about with the modeling is that we do have the various scenarios, and that when this bubble bursts, and to know what we can do, we'll be ready to move in some direction, whatever. So we're imagining, right, where we need to be or where we're going to go based on where we are now, and what does that look like. Right.
Right. All of the plans, and Jackie alluded to this too with the ramp up and reopening. Everything's scalable that we can go up when we need to. I mean, certainly there's things to think about and to put in place once the time has come. But we're flexible.
And that's costly too.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's not going to be free to do all of this to be able to reopen a building.
Yeah. We've got a number of questions about live streaming and equipping, doing concerts, streaming for resident arts groups. Do either of you want to talk about that arena? Jackie.
I can go first and talk about the resident organization. So as I said when I talked a little bit earlier, we are in discussion with the resident organizations. The level of interest or the possibility for the different groups varies depending on who we're dealing with. But certainly that ease up period is when we would look at what sort of rehearsals or recorded type performances or streaming they could do in the building that we could make work during this time when we still can't have audiences in the facility. And so there certainly is that period of time where we're easing up and ramping up before we actually get there. And that really is about the resident organizations and working with them.
And they, we meet with them regularly, and they're just like us. They're doing all the modeling too. They have scenario A, scenario B. If we open it this time, we could do scenario C. If we don't open, then we can go to scenario D. Like they're all thinking about the same things too, because they have all the same concerns that we do, right? And
and it comes down to safety. So that's what it's about. And whether we can doesn't necessarily mean at the end of the day that we should, or that we're ready to, or that people are comfortable with that.
Right.
As we talk about resident organizations, I'd like to share a really wonderful story that came out of this spring, not long after the initial closures. We were meeting with resident arts groups, I think weekly at that time. And one of the collective ideas was, about rent, that for all of our resident arts organizations, they all have rent as Overture rental as a budget line, and also that's something that supports Overture. And again, we're all an ecosystem. We are dependent upon each other for the strength of the arts organizations in this community. And the resident organizations came together and put together a case statement, and I worked with them. We worked collectively on this, and we presented the idea to Madison Community Foundation for a resident arts company rent relief fund. So what this fund would do is, as resident organizations resume operations and performances in Overture, that their rent would be supported, that they would receive a credit, and Overture's rent from those activities would be guaranteed. And Madison Community Foundation was very open to the idea, and asked around, for a few leadership donors to see what their interest was. And we're very excited to share that the Madison Community Foundation, Diane Ballwig, Joe and Mary Ellen Sensenbrenner, the Marriott Daughters Foundation, and the EVU Foundation have all pledged to support this rent relief fund that will help resident organizations resume their operations as they're able to, either through a broadcast taped performance now at Overture or in the future. So thank you to those donors that have made that fund possible, so that, again, we can all start coming back for you when the time comes. Tim, I'm going to send this one to you, because this is from Dennis Palmer. Hi, Dennis. Could some of the National Geographic presentations be done on a national basis, and the proceeds could be shared between all the centers that sponsored the program?
Well, you'd have to talk to National Geographic about that. But if you go onto their website, they are doing some national streaming stuff right now. It's tricky when you're asking an organization that also is probably hurting with their touring arm through this time to support all these other venues. But they are doing some digital content. It's weird because those artists don't tour. That's kind of probably the only artists we bring in that most of them don't do a tour. They just come in for your venue. Like, we pick our artists or our speakers and our explorers, and they come in, they fly in, do the show, and then fly back out. They don't like tour to a bunch of different venues. But it's a great idea. I think you should write to National Geographic and say, on behalf of, a lover of their product, because, man, that's a great series, everybody, and those speakers and those explorers are killer, right? They were smart. Like, we moved a couple of their shows around pretty early because they were going safe. I mean, they went out to March to say, we don't want any of our speakers going out to be in any unsafe situation. So we are not booking anything through the end of March. So they're great to work with. I love them so much. I know that didn't answer your question, but I tried.
But another opportunity for some advocacy work with some of our great
well,
partners.
it's not a bad idea. Like, it's not a bad idea. Like this Chris Jackson idea. Let me tell you just real quickly how that happened. But it was it's co-produced by one of the agencies and actually Dallas Summer Musicals. And it was a guy there who is their programming person, and said, this would be, let's try to figure this out. And then he started asking us, would you be part of this? And so we were part of the planning and the idea and the moving forward with it. And, we were all thrilled to be part of it. But, an idea could happen like that. I'll write them. Want me to write them? I'll write National Geographic. I'm going to write that note down right now. I am. I'm not. I am. I'm being serious.
No. We have a question from Autumn Rose. Is there an industry approximation when any venue may open next year? Jackie, do you want to take that one?
No, I don't.
Well, it's all, again, it's all
can't
about,
answer.
well, it's all about the health and safety, right? It's all about, everybody's community. Like, we're in a very protective community here, but not every state is like that, or not every
Right.
community is like that.
Right.
So people are relying on their ability to do that. I don't know, there was,
Yeah, there's in Nebraska, the Lead Center is opening as small houses and everything that involves, and so it'll be interesting to watch how that goes. But that goes to the point where you've got some outliers, and then the middle portion of the performing arts centers, and when they're all going to sort of open together is lots of different things are talked about, but there's no we don't know yet. We just don't know yet.
And there's been some venues in the South that open that have closed back down.
Right.
And so was that financially smart? No. Like, was that like you can't jump it. People are jumping everything right now. And we see openings and then, oh, the virus spreads and you go, oh, wow, surprise. And then they close back down again. We don't want to get ourselves, nor do our colleagues really in the city want to get into that kind of a situation.
And we're seeing around the state too, since now each county is able to make their own their own precautions. That there's some performing arts centers, small venues that are trying very small things where they're not reliant upon a certain a higher percentage, and they're not producing bringing in a Broadway show. I mean, it's a very low artist fee, but they're not bringing in the touring artists. They're doing again that local arts presentation. So again, we're seeing even on the small scale what we expect will likely be on the larger end of things too, of that the rebirth of the local arts before the tours can really make it back. I don't see any additional questions at this time. And I think we covered those that had come through registration. Again, thank you so much for submitting your questions beforehand to help us prepare for this grand experiment and for participating all night long with us. Tim and Jackie, thank you so much for being on the hot seat tonight and sharing what we're seeing in the industry. And it really does mean a lot to have you all with us tonight. As Tim said, we really miss you. We miss seeing you in Overture Center and hearing what you just saw and what you can't wait to see, meeting your friends and family that come with you to see a show. And one of my greatest joys is on a student matinee day when you have this cacophony of sound, these laughters and thrills, and these kids with this awestruck joy as they look up into that rotunda lobby on their way to their first show ever. We can't wait to get back to that again and share it. But again, we want to do it when it's safe and when we can gather in mass gatherings. Just 10 people just doesn't do it quite yet. It is a time for us at Overture, a time of a true intermission. An intermission is different activity, but there is still activity. You go up and you visit with a friend and maybe see a gallery, get a snack. And like that, we are continue to serving our mission differently, primarily digitally, until we can get back for our second act. There are so many unknowns today and so many things that are interconnected, as you heard from Tim and Jackie. However, we do know that Overture will be back. As much as this is a challenge, this is also a great opportunity. Our world has changed in the last 6 months, and Overture will evolve too. It will need to reflect the needs of our community within the abilities of our financial position. It will take several years for Overture to fully recover financially and to build programs up again. But as Tim said, this is a time for us to dream and to think about what new programs might be and really craft bringing back the ones that we feel continue to serve our community in the ways that they should, very intentionally. Yes, we will look different from the way we did on March 12th, 2020, and we should. In order to get from here to there, we do need your help. Tomorrow, September 1st, we are announcing our intermission campaign, and we aim to raise $1.5 million now through December 31st. So far, 27% of our goal has been pledged or given. And thank you so much to those of you who have donated tickets, made gifts to us, and believe in our future in the arts. We hope you will consider making a gift to support the center you love and help us build that future. If you are able, please consider a gift today at overture.org/give. And every dollar counts. And every dollar really does have a big impact on our ability to weather through this period. Financial gifts, though, are not the only way to help. As Tim mentioned, there are a lot of local, state, and federal movements to encourage art support through legislation. And that will help all arts rise again. Arts Wisconsin is a great resource in that space, and they offer lots of easy ways to advocate. Consider becoming an usher as our volunteer as we approach reopening. We have a core of about 500 volunteers, and we do expect that some may not feel comfortable in the early days of reopening. And so we will need some more to come in and join us and to help keep this a welcoming atmosphere at Overture. Share what you have learned today and what the arts mean to you. Be an arts cheerleader. And more than anything, let's help curb COVID in our community. So wash your hands, and keep 4 theater seats apart. And when you do need to go out, wear a fabulous mask. Thank you tonight for joining us. Tomorrow you will receive an email from us, and please take a few minutes to tell us what you thought and let us know what other topics you'd like to have us cover in future forums. We do have forums planned for October about Overture's role in the community, and also in November about the role in the downtown recovery. Tim, can I ask you, is there a tease about a September town hall?
Oh yeah, I forgot. And I had it on my list to talk about. I have 2 things that I forgot. And part of Emily's job was to remind me like that. So it was planned. For those of you who are Broadway subscribers, you know the fall is not happening, right? Because, but we are working on an announcement about the new season. And we're going to have a special Zoom call on that. So be watching for an invite over the next couple of weeks. And everything is subject to change. So like, you know, I hope it doesn't change again. And for those of you who have tickets to show that you haven't heard anything about yet, or that we got a thing saying that this is being rescheduled, if you haven't heard from us, it means we don't know either at this time. We have stuff sitting out there on holds with agencies and artists, but there was a whole period of time where it just all stopped, right? Because nobody knew what to do with it. And I will say that we have booked some new stuff that is very exciting that hasn't been announced because, you know, it's over a year away, right? Like over a year away, right? So hopefully that will be exciting then for you too.
Thanks, Tim. And before we go out, we have one more beautiful video for you to enjoy. Again, thanks for joining us tonight. And Tim, will you talk just a little bit about that?
Just a little bit. Yeah, so we did a virtual Jerry Awards, and we had that, you saw the opening number, I feel stars, I need stars, I see stars, I see stars. I may know the musical, but I don't know the words. And this one was our closing number that we did on the show, which was with our Spirit recipients, and that is each school's peers choose someone. It could be a performer, someone backstage, or a musician who really has the spirit of their show and their community and is positive and whatever. And it's always one of the most touching numbers in our show every year, and we just love it. And so they are doing this final video that was the closing of our show. You Will Be Found from Dear Evan Hansen. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Have you ever felt like nobody was there?
Have you ever felt forgotten in the middle of nowhere?
Have you ever felt like you could disappear?
Like you could fall and no one would hear?
So let that lonely feeling wash away. 'Cause maybe there's a reason to believe you'll be okay. 'Cause when you don't feel strong enough to stand, you can reach out your hand. And oh, someone will come running, and I know they'll take you home.
Even when the dark comes crashing through, when you need a friend to carry you, and when you're broken on the ground,
You will be found. So let the sun come streaming in, 'cause you'll reach up and you'll rise again. Lift your head and look around. You will be found. 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 There's a place where we don't have to feel unknown. And every time that you call out, you're a little less alone.
if you only say the word,
From across the silence, your voice is heard. Oh,
someone will come running
oh,
to take you home.
take you home. Take you home. Even when the dark comes crashing through, when you need a friend to carry you, when you're broken on the ground, you will be found. So let the sun come streaming in, 'cause you'll reach up and you'll rise again. If you only look around, you will be found. You will be found. You will be found. Out of the shadows, the morning is breaking, and all is new. All is new. Filling up the empty. Suddenly I see that all is new. All is new. You are not alone. 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 You are not. You are not alone. Even when the dark comes crashing through, when you need someone to carry you, when you're